Hello, welcome everyone to today's webinar where we're going to be discussing same-day shot to site and how you can achieve that for your own studio. I'm joined today by three very special guests. I'll allow them to introduce themselves, but first, my name is Dave. I'm going to be the host today. I work in site operations. I spent about 5 years with Pixelz back in the day. And basically my role is just to ask the silly questions and keep things moving. Kate, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Dave. So my name is Kate. I am the head of product experience at Bestseller. One of my areas at Bestseller is head of the BESTSELLER Studios, which is our e-commerce image production studio based in Poland. And we are shooting both stills and video for about 15 of our internal and external Bestseller brands. I've been a Bestseller for 2 years, and I've been in e-commerce image production for 15. So yeah, looking forward to sharing some experiences today. I'll hand over to Carlos.
Hello, good morning. Good morning from Berlin. I'm Carlos. I'm a product manager in Zalando currently, but I've been working as a post-production lead for the last almost 7 years in Mango and then in Zalando. And yeah, Zalando is a really big e-commerce retailer, as you know. We're in 17 countries and we shoot a lot of SKUs. We will talk about this later every day. So yeah, happy to be here. And James, hand over to you.
Hi, thanks, Carlos. Hi, I'm James. I'm currently a product specialist at Creative Force. I've been with Creative Force since the inception of the company, initially joining Pixelz, the sister company of Creative Force, with the express intent of building out this e-commerce content creation tool. Prior to joining Creative Force, I was at John Lewis, a large omni-channel retailer in the UK. And I spent 6.5 years there leading creative production operations. So a large internal photo studio team, 3 external photographic partners, producing e-commerce imagery and imagery for our marketing teams.
Thank you, everybody. And I just remembered as well, those of you watching, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, don't hesitate, type them into the chat. We do have people monitoring that and we'll be responding to you. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got representatives from some pretty high volume studios here, like a wealth of experience. The webinar is about going same day shot to site. So you can assume speed is pretty important, but I don't want to make too many assumptions. So I was curious, what everybody sees as the most important KPIs today, and also whether maybe COVID has impacted that a little bit. Yeah, Carlos, what do you think?
The most important KPI, and the reason we're here is, as you said, right? Time to online. In our case at Zalando, the faster we can go, the better. The more time that this article is online in full price, the sooner that we get this trendy new sneaker online. We're the first ones, and before anybody else, so we're the first to sell it. And yes, super important. We focus mainly on that, and we achieve the same day time to online. It's just like a chain of production, and even with Corona, we were able to keep that. Of course, we had to change some of the processes, and maybe with the new health measures and separations and all these masks and everything, we had to adapt, but we kept the same speed. And the only kind of difference is that we were not able to shoot with so many models than before, but we're just trying to do the best with pack shot and hanging the clothing, or maybe layouts, trying to do the best with it. But yeah, time to online is the most important one, and we kept that with Corona. And let's see if we can come back to the previous workflow as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can add a little bit to that. I think from our side, yeah, of course, the COVID shook us a little bit, but I don't think it really changed how we measured success or our main KPIs. when it came to targets and turnaround times, things like that. I think all of these are ingrained in us day to day when it comes to a studio team. It's the core of our business. We basically eat, sleep, breathe production. I'm sure Carlos and James completely understand this. And of course, we always want to turn around more products in a short amount of time. But I think for us, the main difference was, I think, in our team spirit too. So we had to really keep our team spirit up, and it made us come a lot closer together. I mean, we're all in different locations. I'm based in Amsterdam. Our team is in Poland. And we had to really navigate not only the changes that we were having with our own personal health, but also in our teams and how to then continue with business as usual. So I found, one of the big measures of success we had to implement was listening more. I think be more intuitive with the initiatives we had. Like Carlos said, maybe pack shots instead of model, or trying to do whatever we could to get products online while we were waiting for the smaller wins. And I say smaller wins, like receiving products actually was even becoming a problem with various technical issues, or even being able to welcome models back to the studio. So social distancing became a word we used every day, but I think also we really forgot, or we didn't forget it, but I think we placed more attention on how we have to look after each other, right, and our team safety. And if we could do that, we really had to be responsible for each other's day-to-day safety. Then, being able to have successful KPIs, no matter what they were, kind of became really big wins, versus just having products go online as fast as possible, which we managed to keep up with, of course, but doing so without having a completely exhausted team was super important for me too. So somewhere in the middle of that, we got through it. But I think none of us want to look back on 2020 with much love. We're looking forward to what comes next, I suppose.
Yeah, not a great year in general, but it's pretty impressive that you were able to keep up your time to online, like to keep same day shot to site while also tending to everyone's safety. And I don't know, were you able to keep like relatively the same throughput, Carlos, Kate?
No, of course it changed a little bit, and mainly because the reason of not social distancing and not being able to shoot with model. But from the other side, shooting with model is more time spending, right? Because of all the bookings, preparation, makeup, that's not possible right now because of social distancing again. But shifting to pack shot, for example, with mannequin, made us even go faster because it requires less time. So we can even shoot more articles. Also, it's just one people in the set, like one photographer or one stylist shooting with the mannequin. So it's safer, faster, but of course you don't see the garment in a model. So there is some impact on the customer of how they perceive the article, and of course this is impacting on returns and conversion. Right? You cannot understand as good as you could with a model. Yeah, but in general, and answer your question, we should even more. That's a funny outcome. Yeah, very different one.
It's one of the great things about working with such creative teams. I think 2020 isn't a year you'll look back on, any of us will look back on with any great fondness, but certainly what I've seen working with our customers and potential customers is kind of an incredible resilience and that creativity coming to a fore in the way people were able to keep going. And I found that really inspiring and great, as you said, Kate, that can bring the teams closer together. When you're thinking about each other's physical health, there's just much more thought for each other, which I think is a lovely outcome.
Yeah, and it also depends on the location, right? I mean, I know, for example, Germany had different restrictions, pardon me, to Poland, for example, and we weren't running the same types of production shutoffs or reopens at the same time. So it was kind of a balance of, using all the time you had when you could, and then maximizing on pack shots or other various creative techniques while you couldn't, and still navigating the way to reintroduce those production types once you could. So I think for us who were trying to navigate completing production on all types of sets for single products, it became even bigger problem. But also it really pushed our creative juices in terms of how to get that done. Exactly. And how to make sure that we were then getting products live same day in terms of pack shots, but then also make sure that do we at the end of the day need to shoot model shots first? Have the products already sold out? Have they not? Do they still need the investment of model shots 2 months down the line or not? And how do we navigate that? So yeah, it was a lot of thinking, I think, on our feet. I'm sure we can all agree on that. But yeah, I agree with Carlos. So we were ready and hungry for more products, right, every day, because suddenly we had capacity where we would normally be using that for model production. So
yeah, as you said, we were lucky in Germany, and we didn't feel the same impact than in other countries until just recently, right? Since December, where we were impacted heavily, let's say. But Berlin was always kind of in the best zones in Europe, luckily.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm based in Los Angeles, and we still have an awful lot of restrictions. But people are shooting in studio, and they are going. They're keeping their image volume up, and they're getting products through. And yeah, James, like, what do you think? I know you're a consultant and you've worked with a lot of different brands and retailers, and that's why I'm directing this one to you. But what do you think is a normal lead time for a brand or a retailer to have, assuming they have their own in-house studio and control over pretty much all aspects of their production?
Well, I'm not sure I've met too many studios that got control of all aspects of their production. That's definitely a utopia moment. It's a great question, actually, Dave. I think normal is a difficult kind of figure to kind of settle on. I think one of the things I see is a lot of variety. I would certainly say it's different. There's a different focus for retailers to brands. I think brands are kind of working much further upstream of the season and typically have more time to produce and focus on the aesthetic. But I think that where speed to market is a key, and for retailers, I think between 5 and 10 days isn't atypical. But I think what we find a lot of is that excuse me, and I turned that onto mute as well. It seems that didn't work. But yeah, no, I was going to say, although kind of a 5 to 10 day turnaround isn't uncommon. I think what you see a lot of is the kind of outliers, where you're up to 20, 30 days for products that have gone missing in the process and are causing a challenge. So yeah, I would say, if put on the spot, for maybe 5 to 10 days is not unusual. I don't know, Kate, Carlos, you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I worked previously at Mango, and also we had friends in Inditex and different brands. And as you said, that's quite usual to wait some days, work in batches or sessions, like it was an editorial shoot, right? Same day, same model, retouch all together. We check all together with our director or stylist or even the whole team. And after a couple of days, and when all agree that the session, the shooting as a whole is complete, then proceed to upload. And compared to Zalando, probably with Bestseller, that's completely different. We work in a SKU base, and as soon as the SKU is ready, next, and yeah, in a continuous flow, more than batching.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of that kind of time pressure also depends on whether the retailer is shooting from a pre-production sample, which again provides them with a little bit more flex in terms of the time, or whether they're shooting from stock, and obviously you have that very high pressure to turn around the images and get the product online.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we have the two of them, pre-samples and sales orders, we call here, and they have a stock. So the only thing that's missing is the picture to go online. So all the pressure is on us. We need to hurry, and maybe as soon as it arrives to the studio, in just a couple of hours, it's online.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kate, I know that you've kind of been a little bit on both ends of this with Bestseller. Like I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when you came into Bestseller a couple of years ago, lead time was more in that like 5, 10, or maybe even more days, and that you were able to bring it back down and get to this point where we're talking about, same day shot to site. Could you give us some insight a little bit into that process, like the main pain points that were slowing you down and sort of like how you address that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a difficult topic, I think, because there are so many variables when it comes to producing for multiple brands, right? So saying all products, or our ideal environment where all products go live the same day, is impossible. But I'll flip the topic a little bit and say we've definitely achieved same day shot to ready for site. I think for most of us in production, we aren't the ones clicking go live, right? So we're just making damn sure that the assets are ready for that. And to get to that point is, I think there's two really big parts of that we need to be in control of. One is how the products are working their way through the studio, and one how they're working their way through post-production. And both of these create massive bottlenecks. Or I know we're going to be discussing flow and that in a couple of questions time, but you know, quite a big trend. And I will say, like 10 years ago, back in the day, 10 years ago, was this batching idea, right? Where you shoot all day, shoot, and then the next day you're kind of, you know, uploading everything to whoever it is, freelancers, external post, whatever it might be, and then you're waiting for it to come back in batches. You're doing your checks, and everything is done in these chunks. And to be able to change that, you need to change everyone's minds. 27 days before a product went live, and I'm not even kidding on that. That was a norm, right? Because there were many variables that were deemed as okay that delayed our time. And then you still have all the human elements, and those were the pain points that you're speaking about, which is checking spreadsheets, Google Docs, status reports, updates, trying to remember yesterday why we didn't get that one product done. And it came down to granular product level, why products were not going live, which is not the most healthy way of looking at a mass production environment, because you make yourself completely crazy on this. So long story short, how we did it was, I think, looking at both sides of that, about the, you know, during production and then post-production, and how to have these running concurrently all through the day, so that by the time you're shooting product 7 of the day, product 1's ready. And you know, your teams are fresh, they've just shot it, they remember all the problems with it, they remember what needs to get changed, they're physically, it's still, you know, very much in the forefront of their minds. And the teams that are working on it can ask questions in real time and have the whole process essentially flow. I don't want to ruin the topics for later. So yeah, but the pain points, I think, are also a lot to do with changing people's mindsets on what we're trying to solve, right? Because it isn't only, and I keep going back to the same topic, it isn't just about getting products live quickly, but it's also about brand requirements, and not just having products live for the sake of having them live, but having brand tone of voice correct, and having the creative elements still there, and having each person who touches the product really be invested in the part of the process that they're invested in, so that we're all proud at the end of the day when a product goes live, and not just, well, it was 3 hours or 6 hours. Definitely proud of the no more 27 days. I will say that. So there is one massive win there. But yeah, also, you know, looking at the markets out there, knowing that if you're not, and I'll use the examples Carlos used just for ease of use, but Zalando, Mango, Zara, Inditex, Bestseller, we're all different companies, right? We all have different KPIs. And if I'm measuring myself against those, not measuring myself against my brand requirements, it also creates problems. So hopefully in there's the answer to your one-liner question. But yeah, to really have a successful high volume production, I think you need to make sure that all of these parts of the process are really in check or under control. And then when you look at the 3-day turnaround times, you really are you know, celebrating successes versus just looking at how quickly the majority of products went live, because there's so many variables. Yep. Did that answer the question? I hope that answered the question.
Oh,
No,
yes. Answered many questions.
Do you have any questions left for the rest of the? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, well, you're kind of leading me directly into something I am curious about, which is, and you spoke to it some, like what you should be measuring yourself on, like your own specific brand requirements, your individual studio requirements. But like, as somebody who does spend a lot of time like working with data and numbers and things, I am curious, like, if you are able to reduce it eventually down to like a bottom line thing, like are you able to like attribute your time to market, like how fast you're producing your photos, like the impact that it actually measurably generates on the business?
Is that for me? Yes.
I was thinking of you, but also Carlos. Yeah, very welcome. I'd like to hear from both of you.
Sure, I can continue. Zalando is a really database company, so everything is measurable or measure, or we're going to measure it. So yeah, just a couple of minutes, we know the impact that it has. I don't have this number handy, but we know exactly what it means to delay a couple of hours an article going live, or a day. And in fact, we calculate and optimize and make our business case in these kind of metrics when we have to change something. But it's more difficult to measure is the quality. And for example, as Kate mentioned, that the transition was to go to 1 day, like time to online. In Zalando, what we experienced since I joined was more an increase of quality, because this was already almost in place. I mean, we improved with the years, with the learnings, with the team mindset and everything mentioned, but we already were in a good place. I think it was like two days average, and now it's 1 point something. But increasing quality, that's difficult, and that's difficult to measure. How do you prove to a tech or database company that this model that's higher ranking in models.com is better than the other one, is going to perform better, it's going to move better, and therefore the quality of the pictures will be better and selling more, right? We have some instruments, let's say, or tools in place. We can do A/B testing easily. We can track performance of how these articles sells, and we can relate this maybe with a photographer at some point. This is something that we will like to look more at. And what we already begin doing is measuring the technical quality of images, image size, image compression, quantity of images, quantity, or maybe the competition of the look, right? How many, the combination of articles. And next steps will be measuring the quality. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, and we've mentioned in the past too, is that you want to put processes in place, essentially the metric processes in place, that all your team members, all your creatives can just do their job to the best of their ability without having to try and somehow backtrack and deliver reports daily on what they've been doing, right? So I think maybe it sounds a bit ambitious, but if you have all of that in place and you don't have to be relying on data for things like turnaround time, because you never really outside of your deadline time or outside of your KPIs turnaround time, then you have a little bit more time to kind of be focusing on the more subjective, which is difficult for all of us. I mean, if you put the 5 of us in a room and ask us all to look at the same set of images, we'd all have a different opinion. And now you're asking strangers on the other side of the screen to do the same and have the same opinion as you. And that's something that I think it also depends on how much importance you place on different parts of the process again, right? And number one for us and number one for you, I'm sure, Carlos, as well, is to make sure that we are turning around products as quickly as possible with as high quality as possible, brand specific tone of voice on point, and then from there we look at all the rest, and to have reporting in place where we don't necessarily have to be spending hours and hours trying to prove what our studios are doing, because it's very obvious, right? We can see turnaround times have dropped significantly, and they will continue to drop. I mean, we're talking 3 hours at the moment. As the minute you mention 3 hours, and suddenly your brands are, okay, 3 hours, and that's what it's measured against versus 1 day. And it's always going to be, I think, a chasing our tails and catching up with time. But yeah, I think every now and then, if you get a little bit sick of the metrics and the reports, then we look at the subjective topics and we try to have a bit of a debate about those, and then go back to somewhere balance between the two. I think it's interesting. Yeah, interesting place to be.
Exactly. I mean, we have tools for everything at Zalando, and everything is homemade. So we have, I don't know, hundreds of tools in the studio even. Now I think the next step is to unify this, optimize them. And what we've been doing during the last 2 years is optimizing some repetitive work and not non-skill required work, so the creative can focus more on what's objective, exactly what you said, right? Maybe by keeping the same time to online, by optimizing this, and this, they had more time to shoot, to retouch, to check what they've done, and that increases the quality.
Do you have like a methodology, Carlos, that like you guys use to try to find those like improvement opportunities? I think that'd be like the lean term, I guess, an improvement opportunity. But how do you like find and then prioritize those things that might be a little ripe for automation, or just, yeah, it's something that you kind of want to get out of people's way?
We have a team that's called Process Excellence. They normally look at this. They map processes, process loops, bottlenecks, and how often they happen. But also, I think it's part of every department lead to look at their own processes, because they know their people, they know the team, how do they struggle or what they're doing every day. And that's what we mainly do, right? We identify that retouchers were standing up to pick up the article on the hanger, but it wasn't clear which one to pick first, for example. I'm just trying to explain it. And maybe by just creating a list, automatic list that they know which article to pick in the screen, is much more faster. And then you're always focusing on what's more important. You don't have to stand up and look for it, and you just need to focus on your station. So this is just a simple thing, but it's really important. And now we were looking at implementing even computer vision for tagging, sorting, and identifying that the article is okay in the shoot, right? If not, just is a process loop that stays in the computer of the studio, saying, no, you need this, or this is wrong, or even fixing it by yourself.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And some of that goes back to what Kate was saying earlier about, like, when you're doing everything the same day, it's like, it's still, all the pieces of it are there. It's still in everyone's mind. You don't have to like be switching thought processes, like you're in context, And James, I know this is something you guys work on at Creative Force, and I know you've been through some improvement opportunities with like John Lewis and some other things. I don't know, do you have some insight there on like just sort of like lean approaches to improving workflows?
Thanks, Dave. I mean, I think that what Carlos was observing there is very much that kind of example of continuous improvement. Ultimately, you need to have a standard, and just actually kind of talking about the metrics part that we were speaking just before. I think all of these things start from a really clear goal for the studio, and a balanced scorecard of metrics, so you can get a clear view of your performance. Because as Kate rightly identified, if your pursuit is solely of kind of a higher throughput and a kind of quicker turnaround, that can be delivered at the cost of quality. And so you need to balance and have a very clear kind of standard, as Lean would talk about, in terms of what you expect from the process. And then when you've got that visibility of your standard, then you're able to kind of see deviations and address them. And there's tools like Pareto analysis, where you can identify the biggest issue that's happening most frequently. The 80-20 rule around kind of the biggest impact comes from potentially kind of 20% of problems. And so you're able to then, from that standard and that visibility of kind of a consistent way of working, you're able to then drive further improvement. And I think once you've created that culture and that mindset, you get to a place where Carlos was describing, where it's a very incremental change. In of itself, it seems not a great deal, but it's always there's always another area to go, somewhere else to kind of pursue in terms of that improvement. And I think one of the things I've said this before, but one of the things I really liked about Lean when I really started to understand it is that actually the teams that are performing these tasks are the ones that know the problems the best. They really understand what's getting in the way, and when you create a culture where their input, their sense of ownership of the process is really kind of embraced, then you get a lot of kind of good feedback, and the team can be empowered to actually drive improvement activity. And without going on about this, the last part of that is that, when you've got that standard, and you've got a kind of active kind of pipeline of ideas, Lean has a very nice kind of concept called Plan, Do, Check, Act, which allows you to kind of identify where you are right now, identify a potential opportunity, run a controlled kind of study, a short trial, and identify whether that idea has worked. And if it does, you've got a structured kind of change to the process that you can put in place. If not, you can kind of go back to the drawing board and look for another idea. So I think there are some really interesting opportunities that lean thinking can provide to support these continuous improvement activities. Did that answer the question, Dave? Sorry, I think I might have meandered a little.
It did. Thank you. And yeah, I think, yeah, I don't want to get like too deep into lean, just because we can't assume. I don't know. It's really easy to like get into all the acronyms, and maybe not everybody's as in love with lean. But I do think lean, it's demonstrated to be so effective across so many industries. And I know it is like it's core to how Pixelz operates and Creative Force operates. And I wanted to talk a little bit about flow coming up. And I don't know, James, do you think you could give maybe a high level on like what flow is?
Yeah, I mean, it's without going back to lean too much. It's essentially flow for Pixelz Creative Force in this context is about a continuous movement of tasks through processes. So without getting too technical, the goal for particularly a studio in support of a retailer, as Carlos and Kate said, is about getting products online. Essentially everything we do, and we care very much about productivity and how many shots we've taken on any given day. But the value we bring to our organizations is when those images actually kind of get online with the copy and we can sell the product. And so that's the value that we're looking to deliver. And a traditional studio model of batching essentially can be just as productive as a flow model, but the goal of flow and the kind of the outcome of flow is that you're actually kind of releasing value every day, rather than in batches, maybe at the end of the week or at the end of every couple of days. And so you don't intrinsically improve the productivity of the studio necessarily, although lean techniques can do that. But flow is about removing that kind of wasted time involved in batching, so that once a product has been shot, you release it into the next stage in the workflow to be worked on. And so that allows you to kind of remove the waiting time, and so you collapse essentially the time between the tasks, and you're delivering value from the studio, those web ready images, in a continuous flow, as opposed to kind of large batches, which you see in many studios. And there are other benefits of flow as well, particularly as Carlos and Kate were talking about in terms of model photography, because if you're able to release images from the set early on in the day, and they go through maybe an aesthetic quality check for styling, hair and makeup, outfits, you're getting feedback immediately. And so the model and the team are still on set, and you're identifying an issue earlier on. And it was one of the kind of foundational concepts of flow, is that you don't build up a huge work in progress of products that are substandard. And so you're able to kind of identify that early, and then leverage the fact that the product, the model, everything, all that coordination that's got that team together is kind of still available to you when you've identified the issue earlier on.
And Kate, I know like you went from, I believe you went from a batching approach to a little bit more of a flow approach at Bestseller, right? Could you maybe speak to that, like how you moved and what that actually means, like practically, and maybe some results?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna take James, pardon me, James's wording of traditional, not old school, when it comes to batching. But of course, this is such an interesting term for all of us that have been in e-commerce since maybe 10 years and more, pardon me, is that the idea was, I'm going to mute quickly and cough. Thank you. The idea is that we shoot, stop, batch, deliver, and then shoot, stop, batch, deliver. And that was the way we did it, right? And of course, we've discussed now many negatives and positives for both flow and batch. But I think what the main driver for this was essentially to have the whole process running the entire time, right? So to have questions being asked while photographers are still in that mindset, as you said, to have everything front of mind, to still be very current, to have the model still on set, etc. And when I started at Bestseller, we, and no one's fault, right? But that's what we were doing. We were batching. So at the end of the day, we would retransfer, that wonderful word, retransfer all the images through, and the next morning, hopefully get them back, even if maybe it was a morning after that, depending on turnaround times. And then we'd have to start the next process. So everyone was very much in these siloed mindsets of, you know, I do my job, and my job ends when I've delivered. That's it. And then the next, you know, the next person in the flow, wrong word there, the next person in the process picks it up and continues. And the problem with that is not only are you removing team effort in a way, because everyone kind of feels like as long as they've done their A to Z, their job is done. You're also creating massive issues for team members to remember what they were shooting yesterday, but also reshoots. Reshoots were one of our really big issues, was that something was shot incorrectly or something we didn't pick up, and we'd have to pick it up again at a later stage. So the idea to move to flow was, I think, based on the need to be able to deliver to our brands examples of what we were shooting during the day as we were going, right? So this is what we're doing. Are you happy? Should we change something? Is the model having a bad day? Should we actually just say, well, let's not waste any more time with this. Maybe we should get somebody else. Or is it amazing? Do we have extra products that we need to speed up on? There's many variables in a day on set that if you aren't batching and you are just flowing, you're able to then control. And you're able to then have this agile or lean approach where you can add a couple products in, you can say, hey, okay, well, actually, those have been canceled or whatever it might be. But also you're giving your post-production teams a little bit of a relief, because they're not just receiving a massive batch of products and expecting very quickly to understand the notes we've attached, you know, to understand all the remove whatever it might be, moles, tattoos, etc., and then have to do it in such a quick time that their quality drops and it comes back. Our QC team is under pressure because the time frame is just, as you know, towards the end of the turnaround time, the people at the end of the process are suddenly always under pressure, and the ones in the beginning never feel it because they don't have a time frame, because they have the whole day. And I think to distribute that pressure amongst, distribute the pressure sounds terrible, but to alleviate the pressure and allow all teams to work unsiloed, to work together, to be kind of, you know, in a team environment where we're walking over and just saying, hey, that image I just shot, quickly have a look at that. Is that the right? I can't remember. I wasn't here that day when styling advice was given or whatever it might be. And you can actually see products live at, let's say, 1 p.m. while you're still shooting the same collection. Is, you know, it's just kind of permanently flowing. And with regards to, I mean, we work with both Creative Force and Pixelz, so we are seeing both sides of this, the benefits of being able to work in this flow process, but also our teams are just extremely happy about the fact that they can still deliver to the next step, right, and hand over the responsibility to the next step in the process, but actually see the whole team, see the team working on the process during the day too, and ask questions and have the QC, you know, our QC senior walk over and say, hey guys, what's happening here, and be involved in the whole process, not just his part. So I think multiple successes when it comes to flow, moving from traditional, I will call it that from now on, James, thank you, to a new way of working. Also just makes us, when we go home, we're done, right? We know our job for that day is kind of in the hands of the next person in the process, in the flow. And when it comes to working with post-production vendors, we then know, okay, you know, we know our turnaround time is very, very specific, and we know when we get back the next morning, essentially we can just hit, we don't do it, but the teams can hit go live and the process is kind of complete, versus having to start the whole process again on day 2 with the same product, with QC and all the rest. So it's been a really, really good journey, but I think part of it also comes down to making sure that the team understands why you're doing it, why you're making these changes, what's important about the changes, and not just, you know, trying something new. And you know, traditional is sometimes ingrained in us. It's been something we've been doing for 10 years. So to be able to handle that people more change management part, to understand that working towards one goal is very much more visible in a flow process than it was in a batch process. So yep, my long answer to a short flow question.
I think it's very well said. I think the idea is usually not so much to like change. You don't want to change the work people are doing. You just want to like make it easier and strip things away and take away the stuff they don't want to be doing. Like nobody wants to be updating spreadsheets all the time. Nobody wants to be shooting based on art direction they're not confident in, that they think maybe it is old and they will have to reshoot. It's just to keep it moving and try to keep communication and context. And I think, yeah, you expressed that very well. Thanks. Yeah, Carlos, does that sound familiar to you? Like when you were speaking on Mango and Zalando, and you actually mentioned something the other day that I thought was very interesting. You were talking about, I believe, retouching, but doing things in parallel, like different stages of the process.
Yeah,
which seems like even the next level flow stuff.
Exactly. At some point in these last 2 years, we had to refurbish the studios, the building, and because of that, we had some space constraints, and the team couldn't be allocated in the same floor. And the other building is a really old one and really, I mean, amazing. But by being old means that we have one elevator, not in the best conditions, let's say, or I mean, it's not the fastest one. And having this flow just with one elevator and teams in different floors, at the end, it's just batching, right? You need to wait until you have some stuff in the rail. Then you have the runner that will put the articles in the elevator, go upstairs to the other team. In this case, was supposed to be retouch. And again, downstairs or to another part of the building for copywriting, article enrichment. I thought that this was like going a step back and in the process that we had already in place. So I proposed to, hey, why do we need the articles in retouch physically? Why we need to move them upstairs? What's the real reason of that? And mainly was for scanning the articles, so knowing which article you have to retouch and opening in the tool in your station. And another one that was the most important is color correction, right? Color correction is one of the most recurring errors or causes of returns. So that was a really important one. But then we tried to, okay, these are the two things that were blocking us to continue on flow. Let's put Digitex on place. This is something that also Amazon was doing, and Nuli in the conference that you had in New York. And this allow us different things. First, they were color correcting everything, making sure that the set output was as perfect as possible. So retouchers didn't have to correct the article. They are also skilling both photo and retouch, so they know, hey, do we have enough pictures for that? Because sometimes you have to do a composing of the article, right? And maybe a photographer is not that used to because it's not retouching the articles, but the Digitech will know. And then, yeah, we unlock this first part of the color, and we develop a internal tool again, as mentioned before. This was this list, right, of articles. It's just a prioritization of. It's just a screen in the browser that, as soon as an article is done in the Digitex station, it appears on the screen. It's updated in real time, and it's not only first in, first out. Thanks to having this virtual rack or rail, we can assign other priorities. So what's more important for the business to go live? So we put this first. What's less important, then we can outsource it in budget, for example, for the night, for Pixelz in this case. And a side benefit of this, but what's really important, is that then we could enrich the article at the same time, because they really need the article physically, right? So while retouching these articles in this list, copywriters are enriching the article. So we, instead of having a sequential workflow, we begin having them in parallel. And that, I think it shortened the time to online by 15%. It's quite a lot. It was really nice to do that. We were facing a problem, and we changed it to an opportunity.
Got to conquer that elevator.
It's a really nice building. If you come to Berlin, it's worth to see it from the outside. It's an old train station for Post. Yeah, you can see the rails in the ceiling. It's amazing. It's worth a visit.
Yeah, I'd love to. Once we get past this like 2020 hangover and we're actually able to travel again, I'm very excited. Yeah, well, actually, so speaking maybe about what's next, like Kate, for example, what are you targeting next, or what do you think is like an area that's ripe for improvement in like workflows, industry? I don't know, like looking forward, what's Kate Davies-Benadé gonna do next?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think right now, in terms of the studios, we're firing on all cylinders, right? The teams are super motivated. We introduced some new production types that we're busy working on. Of course, we're motivated to make 2021 better than 2020, or maybe I should say better than 2019, because we're all agreeing that 2020 is cancelled and we're not looking back on that. But we are always looking, we're always looking at areas to improve. To pick up on what Carlos said, we also have two tracks that we're running. One is innovation and one is continuous improvement. And these are actually separate topics, although sometimes they're merged into one. But we have lists of areas where we need to improve, right? All my managers, one of their big objectives for every quarter is to look at areas to improve and what we can do. And I think it's especially exciting for the creative teams who have the same objective, and for them it's a little bit more difficult than it is, for example, production teams who, of course, we're always looking at speed and we're always looking at throughput and quality and onboarding and et cetera, et cetera. But one big thing we're busy with now is video production. So you don't want to put the cart before the horse. Of course, there's multiple technicalities to take into consideration. So once our brands are ready, we're then ready at the same time. So we're working on that, which is super exciting, which will definitely help with many things. Of course, returns is something we're always focusing on too when it comes to studio production, is how to 100% properly express the product when you're only seeing it online. And then, I think just process, right? Processes, workflows, and that's of course on me. So when you ask what I'm busy with, it's that. My teams are busy with focusing on their own areas. But I think it's going to be a really exciting year. I think we've got very strange measurements from 2020 to look back on this year and to kind of try and understand what we do with that, right? What we do with the data from 2020, because it was based on so many absolutely strange circumstances. How we explain this, how we use our data successfully for 2021. And then also be more open-minded and evolve and grow and place our teams forefront and center of what we're doing. I think that's always been important for me. You guys have all met me in the past, and you know that my team is very, very important for me in terms of placing attention on how they're doing, on their mental health, and how this year has affected them, and how we can not just using reporting and timeframes and data, but also using their experiences of the past year, and how we have these things in studio. Maybe I'm giving away too much information, but we have these days where we kind of allow everyone to have freedom to do whatever they want, to kind of have a free day of what do you think we could better if we could shoot a different production type, or produce something interesting, or whatever it might be. And then we take those into consideration too, and we're looking at the plan for the year of what be it premium categories, be it video, be it whatever it might be, and see if any of these are kind of as important as looking at the competition. So I think it's going to be an exciting year. I'm especially considering the last 4 days the sun's out too. So I think we're all feeling vitamin D motivated to bring out those dusty old continuous improvement lists, and no longer use COVID as an excuse, but as a motivator, right, to get better moving forward, and to look after our teams and ourselves even more, so that we can continue to produce. And Carlos, I'm sure you're going through the same thing now, where we're all, as you said, Dave, a little bit of COVID hangover. We don't really want to have that anymore. We want to let it go and continue with the motivation that we had to see what production or mass production brings us next. I'm excited, to be honest. Even though it's 9:07 in the morning, I've only one coffee. I'm excited. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can even improve more. The team is a big part of it, right? But we're lucky, Zalando. We've been having little rotation, so the team is getting like here, making like a really team environment. They're getting more skill. They're willing to do more creative stuff, and we can use this, and that's really nice. And also, it gives value to the customer as well, right? This outcome. But focus on what's next at Zalando. There's a lot of things that we can do, and that's exciting. Video, I think, will be a really important part, as you said. It's really important. We have data that can prove that, so it's just doing it. And by this, we can learn that we have to focus on what gives more value to the customer. Use this data. And of course, we can improve the tooling, and that's an important part of Zalando as well. But because there are too many things to do, we now need to really prioritize on this. What customer wants for this category, or personalization. I mean, as all this data is what's going to be, I think, really important in this next year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just to add to the last part of that is, we tried to unsilo ourselves in 2020, especially with everything becoming, meetings, and you had to really be quite specific. If you wanted to talk to someone, you had to create a meeting. It wasn't just kind of at the coffee machine, have a little chat. But it is to then continue to do so across various teams, like you mentioned, Carlos, the customer teams, for example, who have the data that we need to be able to use to be able to give our customers the best experience, not just looking at turnaround time, same day, shot to site. Now we can almost tick that box. So I don't want to say that with too much positivity, because we have to continue the process of keeping ourselves there, but then to use the data from other areas of the business to be able to better the customer experience and to be closer to the customer, even though it seems like there's been a big wedge between ourselves and the customers in the last year. It's hard to get back to being closer to them and delivering even more of a personalized experience for them, while still keeping production at the same or even better. So we've got some challenges ahead of us for this year, but I think it makes it exciting, right?
Yeah, exactly. Also, I think machine learning is going to be a big player on this. It's going to help us understand and personalize and automate what's not really a creative step.
Yeah, exactly. We rely on Sebastian for more of that. Sebastian, if you are listening, then we'll be coming to you for automation and AI requests in 2021. So better get ready.
Yeah, you kind of teed me up for that one. Sebastian is Pixelz AI scientist, and we do have a webinar available on demand where he goes into exactly how Pixelz uses AI. So you can look for that, and it should be available. I think probably on the same page where you found this person watching this. James, what do you think about the future? Where do you think we're headed? You're muted.
That was all incredibly interesting. I can't remember any of it. No, I think actually Kate and Carlos touched on, I think, the big things that are coming. I think that what we've been trying to do with Creative Force and in support of kind of reducing complexity and manual effort in workflows is going to continue. So I think AI and machine learning is going to help us automate more tasks, free the creative guys to focus on where they're adding value for the customer. So I think that's a really, really big thing. And I think that the diversity and personalization and kind of that much more sort of intimate conversation with customers requires a lot of effort. And right now, the manner in which you might kind of look at focusing photography or imagery to specific customers' needs and giving them imagery that maybe reflects more of their perspective, it puts a lot of pressure on kind of asset generation, and so I can see technology playing a big part in supporting that going forward. And on a personal level, one of the things that I've spoken to lots of customers about recently is that, you know, I think the lines between kind of branded photography, you know, the marketing imagery and product photography is continuing to blur. You know, I think people are realizing that the kind of the brand representation on your product pages is crucially important, and that's a really difficult thing to kind of manage. I think we spoke earlier about how, you know, even assessing quality is challenging, and typically that resides with some specific creative individuals in an organization. But when you have the incredibly broad assortment and high volume that we need to shoot, and yet you're trying to hit those quality standards, we need to do more to support teams in kind of sharing that knowledge and understanding of what's on brand and what's off brand. And I think that, you know, as we automate more and we get better kind of control over our assets, we can create technological solutions that supports that learning and kind of continual dialogue about where we're going with the brand imagery and whether it's on message or off message. So, top of my head, Dave, I think that's that's three things.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I know. Yeah. As a front-end web developer, right, I've spent a lot of time working on like PDPs and PLPs and trying to figure out the balance of like video and imagery. And I think if you can figure that out through AI, that would be very useful. Very, very useful and very interesting to a lot of people.
It's interesting. Video seems to be going through a bit of a renaissance now. It was fairly big when I was back at John Lewis, and I think we saw a dip in that. And certainly my conversations with customers and potential customers, we're seeing that being much more important to organizations, and kind of supporting good workflows for video is definitely a focus for us at Creative Force.
Yeah, but also video is a challenge, right? Because the files are heavier. It's difficult to maybe automatize the steps these days. How do you crop the video and put it all together, while a picture is easier? So even it will be an important player, I think. We will need like new tools to allow us work in a flow environment with video. Currently, what we do in Zalando is by batching. So it's like it's not the same workflow than with picture, and that's a challenge. Hopefully, we have new tools that can allow that, can automatize that, and yeah, we see more videos online.
It's on our roadmap for this year, Carlos. So
it's a good point.
All right, we're down to just 2 or 3 minutes. So what I'd be interested in is so let's say you're speaking to your past self and you got a little bit of advice to give to them about how to approach this, like this flow approach, or this, you know, get the same day shot to site. That's the webinar title. Let's stick with that. What advice would you give your younger self? Let's start with you, Carlos.
Yeah, that's a good one. First of all, is change, and change is difficult, right? I think Kate talked about this before. Change management, and it needs to be explained. And if you didn't experience this before, first you will say that it's challenging, it's not possible, or it's not for us. I think that's the first reaction. Yeah, but I mean, you can really see the benefits in just by, I mean, listening to this webinar, how good it is, or how good it could be for everybody, for the business and for the customers. But in general, I think that what you need to allow this happening, and a really good advice is to have the proper tooling in place, because this will make the change easy. And that's the most difficult part of changing, like make it easy, right? And explaining, and that's a soft transition and everybody happy with the outcome. So yeah, I think a good tooling, use a good tooling, Carlos, from 3 years ago.
Yeah, I guess from my side,
what would you say?
From my side, I would shake myself and say, do not go into this thinking you can make your current processes fit your future workflows. Do not try and do this, right? Understand that with change comes top-down change, bottom-up change, but mostly change of process, and accepting this. And yeah, we often try and take, you know, our square peg and put it in the round hole of future and future change, and that doesn't work. There will, you know, if you want to automate, if you want to, whatever you might want to do, you need to relook at your own processes as well as where you want to be. And yeah, I think I will say that to myself 100 times over probably, regarding, you know, whatever change might be, but traditional processes don't always have room in automation or in future successes, and be willing to let some of those go and let them go with your teams, right? Talk about it and understand what you're doing, and make sure management understands, make sure your teams understand on all levels that it will be a bit of a difficult transition. But when you're looking back, and that's what we're doing now, right? We're looking back, and we in retrospect, I couldn't be happier with the change, but it was quite frustrating while in it. So maybe just letting go a bit of the frustration would have been much easier. I mean, James was there on day one before we even started any of this change. And I think I have one photo, and I'll try and find it and share it with James, of the day he was there, and how all of us, you know, we were just in shock about how different this would be. And looking back, it was absolutely amazing process. So yeah, that would be easier on ourselves, and make sure that we are, yeah, gentle on ourselves while making big process changes. And if you able to do that, then it'll be quite an easy shift. So
past Kate, listen to present Kate.
Past Kate doesn't listen. That's the problem. So that's how I said, after you do a bit of shaking at the same time, make sure that it's heard. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our time for today. We are at an hour. I want to thank Kate, Carlos, James. Thank you for joining. Viewer, you'll be getting an email with a review after watching this. If you could give us feedback, we really appreciate that. It'll help us improve future webinars. And yeah, on behalf of Pixelz, Creative Force, everyone else, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.